So glad to have you. We've known each other for years. Worked together for years. It's so great. We've always wanted to talk about Artful Dodger.
Oh, I'm excited.
All right, so we're going to go back to the beginning. Sure. What was it about the character of Jack in the Oliver Twist story that made you want to tell his story?
Well, to me, Dodger is where the Artful Dodger is where Oliver Twist comes alive. I actually don't like Oliver Twist as a character. I think he's boring and kind of wet. And, you know, obviously the way that Dickens was writing that book was to be published in serial chunks, like episodes, right? And so he couldn't go back and revise. And to me, when Dodger and Fagin arrive on the scene, that book becomes electric. And he's so exciting and so interesting because he is the one person that really pushes back against Fagin in a way that's brave and plucky and interesting. He's also really proud of being a criminal. It's his profession. And I love that. And so for me, I just think that's such an exciting character to get to work with.
All right, so you had the great opening with Jack playing gambling.
Right.
How did you land in the pilot episode, his introduction to the character?
It's a really good question. We actually had a whole different other introduction to the pilot that we'd planned to film. We had been scoping locations, which actually started the story at the end of Oliver Twist, when Dodger does the crime that got him put into prison, when Fagin abandoned him, and when he's chucked in jail at the end. And we were going to tell that story and then connect it across. But, you know, for various reasons, we decided that wasn't the optimal way to enter the series. So Jeff Walker, who was the setup director on episode 1, back in season 1, we put our heads together, and Jeff thought, well, what if we did a musical sequence to Joker and the Thief? And I liked that idea. And so we then kind of came up with that kinetic opening. That gambling sequence was always going to be there, but it then became the focal point of the opener, which was great because we got to shoot it on a ship, and we got to have rats, and it was great fun.
But I did love the moment where he's gambling on how fast he can amputate the leg.
Oh, yes.
I thought that was a brilliant follow-up. Right? You had the great, but then it was a good way of introducing surgery and gambling, but he's still compassionate. I love that. So what was it about giving that nuanced thing where you had the fun of the gambling, we're laughing, but he actually did care?
Well, that moment where Thomas leans over and said, you know, take your mind to your friendliest memory. I can't remember exactly what he said, but that was pivotal for establishing the character. That gambling on the leg, that happened, right? And the 28-second amputation, that's based on the truth of Robert Listant's amputations. But it was really important to show that Dodger cared about his patients, particularly when they're taking bets on how fast they're going to be able to saw his leg off. And, you know, it's such a privilege to get to work with an actor of the caliber of Thomas Brodie Sangster, of course with Nicholas Burton playing Dr. Sneed in that scene. And Thomas can go from, you know, lovable roguish hero to deeply compassionate doctor on the turn of a dime, and that's why that scene works.
What did you see in Thomas that made you know that he was perfect to play the character?
You know, that's a great question. We looked, Thomas wasn't available, as I remember, when we were first looking for Dodgers, and we looked at a lot of different people, and then Thomas became available and was generous enough to chemistry read with David Thewlis, who had generously agreed to play Fagin. And they read together in London in the studio, and he breathed the character out of him. The minute that Thomas stepped onto the screen, we all stood around and said, "You could print that. That could be the opening sequence, right?" Aside from the fact that they're not in costume, he just breathed the character out so organically and played it in such a grounded way that it was unlike anything I'd seen. And to me, the character of the Artful Dodger is surprisingly difficult to write, because he's surrounded by so many big, colourful characters. And really, it was only when Thomas's voice came through the character that I finally realised that's who he is. So for me, it was a really organic moment of just feeling like I'm not watching somebody perform a role, I'm watching the Artful Dodger step out. It's a testament to Thomas's extraordinary skill as an actor.
And you mentioned David, which I wanted to ask you about. Sure. How that's a difficult relationship. The Jack and Fagin, I mean, creatively, what did you see in the two actors together that made you know that they could pull that off together?
Well, it's not a difficult relationship personally. You know, they're both extraordinarily lovely, very kind people who have a very warm relationship offset. You know, to me, they are two of their generation's greatest British talents. And, you know, chemistry is something that's hard to define, but you know it when you see it, and we certainly saw it on that chemistry read. And I think that both of them were playing quite heightened characters in a profoundly grounded and realist way. And that to me was really important for anchoring the tone of the show. And I think that the combined skill and nuance of both actors working side by side, it was a natural and instinctual fit from the first minute we saw it. And that was the decision right there in the room.
Now, obviously, Belle is a critical character,
Yes.
and I love her opening, committed to surgery, but not unwilling to blackmail to get her way to help. What was eventually their I love their meet cute, really, if you think about it. What was their building their relationship, because it's such a fascinating relationship, and she also has a dark side.
Yeah, look, I love writing Lady Belle so much, and again, we're so privileged to get to have one of Australia's great actresses, Maya Mitchell, play the role. Maya, of course, has a storied history on American television, so it's fantastic to have her back in Australia. For me, Lady Belle is kind of loosely based on my own wife, Rebecca, who is a professor of medieval literature, and I just thought, what would happen if she was in the 1850s and someone said, you can't do your intellectual work, you have to go to a tea party. And that was the genesis for Belle, but Maya brings so much of Maya to the character, which is critical, because to me, Lady Belle needs to have a sense of humor. She needs to have a joy and a warmth to her, I think, to make the character feel lived in and grounded. Otherwise, the character wouldn't come across, I think, in the successful way that she does under Maya's oversight. And when Maya was generous enough to chemistry read for us while she was in the middle of filming another movie from her trailer, and immediately she was the person that I saw with the warmth and the spark and the humor. And that is because Maya is herself she's a great sense of humor, she's a very warm, funny person, she's very down to earth, and that, I think, is pivotal for making that character feel organic in the way that she does.
Now, we take them to season 2, where now they're star-crossed lovers. Like, They're separated. What was the problem from the writing standpoint of kind of now building the story where they're separate? We love them together, but now pulling them apart.
It's always hard to pull apart people you want to be together, right? I mean, I think it's necessary for the drama organically because the characters are suffering from enormous social difference, right? There's an enormous pressure against that marriage at that time. In the 1850s, she's the daughter of an earl, she's the daughter of the governor, he's a convict who's come from the streets. Their relationship is unlikely, and to me that's what makes it burn so brightly too. And so I thought it was necessary for the architecture of the show, but also for those characters to have to really earn that relationship. And obviously it's sad to pull them apart, but I'm proud of the work that the writing team did to find an organic way to achieve that. And I think it also allowed us to explore Lady Jane in a lot more depth. And I always try to write an antagonist in a very humanized way, right? And to me, Lady Jane has her heart in the right place. She loves her daughter. She's acting totally reasonably given her class circumstances. And so it was great to be able to explore that family dynamic as part of season 2.
Now, you also evolved Jack and Fagan's relationship.
Sure.
A little more, the crimes are going up, less petty.
Right.
What was the process like of trying to take their characters into a more evolved state?
Well, I want Fagan to always be on this journey of rising up through. Port Victory is a unique place for Fagan to actually rise through the ranks. And it's kind of loosely inspired by the journey of Mr. McCorber, who is the debtor from David Copperfield. Mr. McCorber ends up as a magistrate in Australia. And so to me, I wanted Fagan to be tested by moving into white-collar crime, where the people he's dealing with, like Elizabeth Maxwell, played wonderfully by Kate Mulvaney, brilliant Australian actor and playwright, and one of our writers who wrote episode 3 and 7 on season 2. So I wanted him to be up against really serious antagonists. And the crime that they do, which is to sell a fake colony in the centre of Australia, is actually based on a real scam from the mid-19th century. There was someone in Edinburgh who sold a fake colony in South America, and it got too big too quickly. People believed him. He made hundreds of thousands of pounds. People were going out there in ships, and he kind of couldn't stop it. So he wanted Fagan to bite off more than he could chew, which of course enables a great character evolution for Lady Fanny when she becomes the key piece to the puzzle of accessing this white-collar world for him.
And our last question, this could have been shot anywhere, ultimately, but it was shot in Australia. How did that help tell the story?
I think it adds something really distinct visually to the production design because we're shooting it under the baking hot Australian sun. You can't disguise that. One of the reasons why we didn't shoot that initial opening of setting it in London was it's just really hard to shoot gloomy London in Australia, right? And I think that brings a new dynamic to the Dickensian influence of the story world. It also allows us to tell stories about Australian history, importantly to tell First Nations stories, and to really, treat British colonialism head-on and critically as we go into that story, which is always something that's been important to me, and it's been a privilege to get to work with great First Nation storytellers like Luke Carroll and Miranda Tapsell, who not only played Red, but has been a writer in the room for 2 seasons. And so I think the Australian dynamic does something very different because it takes these characters from the gloomy streets of London and brings them into the sun-baked world of Australia where everything can kill you, right? And that was a fun thing to explore with Fagin in particular.
Okay, Locker Room Diaries. What was it about the project that initially drew you in?
So Locker Diaries is it's a Disney vertical format, so they're taking some of their existing IPs and shrinking it down to the TikTok platform. And what drew me to it, I mean, these IPs are great, especially if you have a kid in the house. You're no doubt going to hear about zombies and Descendants and all these cool things that they're coming out with. So to be able to take these things which we watch on our widescreen TV and then now to put it on a phone basically, and think, tonally we're changing the drama into some comedy and making some cute moments out of it. And Disney was, very thorough and very serious about making a quality show here. It felt like just working on any other TV show or movie, so that was the best part.
But the camera frame, obviously it is a vertical frame. How did you change your composing approach with that new kind of camera frame and look?
No, not a whole lot. In fact, they had this really brilliant idea. It was to make it from the perspective of a high school locker.
Yeah.
So that kind of justifies the verticality of it. And no, I just attacked it the same way I would any other film in stereo, and we actually mixed it in 5.1 surround. so you get the whole expanse, even though you're watching a very narrow kind of visual.
So how fun is doing musical numbers in this format, especially with zombies?
Well, this one was great, and there's an episode that has yet to air, but we tapped into the noir, kind of like the Chinatown, Jerry Goldsmith kind of vibe to it, and I had a blast with that one.
All right, we're going to go back to your origin story, because this is a Comic-Con, Wondercon convention. When did you know you wanted to be a composer?
Yeah, I knew when I was 6 years old in a big theater, and the lights went dark, and the Batman main title came on, and I was hooked. That kept me going, and since then I've watched thousands of movies at this point, and the music bug always stuck with me. So I wanted to tackle it on my own, and give people that same feeling I felt as a 6-year-old.
Welcome, Winter Song. Yes. What was it about the project that initially attracted you to the role?
One, I've always wanted to shoot in the country of Armenia. Like growing up, we went to Armenian school, learned about the country, all the history that I was visiting every single year, basically. So just the idea of marrying my two loves of acting and the country itself was like all that I could possibly need to dive deep into this role. So.
And what was it about the script and the story that drew you to the project as editor?
I've done a few romantic comedies, and I have always loved the idea of doing something about my culture. It's certainly been a dream. How do we represent our culture better? And I love the idea of being able to do it through this kind of more mainstream genre, something that allows other people to be able to come into it. It's a very easy genre to get sucked into no matter what your background is. So it felt like a really cool way to showcase the country and the culture through the lens of this really beloved genre.
Now, you had to have chemistry with your co-star, Jesse. What was the process of developing the chemistry with Jesse?
So it was Krista and Jesse. So I was like a fan of Krista and her music previous to her getting cast as Liana. So when we were working on the script and I understood what the role was, I was like, this girl is perfect for this role. So I kind of reached out to her as a friend. I was like, hey, are you interested in this? Because it was her first acting job as well. And she was, and with Jesse and Judah had worked on 2 other features with him before. Jesse had just met; we had just found her through social media. So we got so close on set that we all got a cast tattoo on the back of our arms to kind of just remember the friendship we've now created. That's like a lifelong friendship. So it was really special. Yeah.
And for you, we have a lot of editing students watching our show. We're curious, what sequence or scene were you most proud of? Maybe it took a little while to get perfect, but one that went through a lot of what's called drafts until you reached where you were really happy.
There was a sequence in particular that kind of transitions actually when his character and Krista's character have a little bit of a falling out. Jesse has like a little bit of like a talk with Krista about how she needs to be able to move forward in faith and having faith in the fact that new doors will open. And there's this beautiful montage that comes after that. Initially, that montage existed in another place where it felt too early. So the opportunity to move it elsewhere after we had a chance to do some reshoots really opened up what that montage meant. We were able to add additional pieces to it and kind of hone it to be something that was a bridge between them having that falling out to them eventually coming back together that didn't quite exist on the page that it needed to. So that was a really beautiful collaboration between all of us, the producing team, the director, myself, our other producer, and our composer Armand, who was able to help us kind of bridge that gap as well. So.
And speaking of producing, how was it doing 2 premieres? One in Armenia and one in the Warner Brothers studio lot.
So our producer, Annie Dashtrian, our other producer, she had worked at Warner Brothers for 20 years. So she had a great connection there. So we were able to do a nice premiere at the Warner Brothers lot. So that was like a dream come true. And like just the community coming together and watching this amazing story about their own culture on screen was really special. But then, going across the water to Armenia, to a whole other culture and a whole other mindset of like what people in their country are portrayed kind of on screen, and they weren't used to that. So when they saw, they're like, wow, this is like a very accurate and also, relatable feeling that we're watching ourselves on screen. And it was the first time it was ever portrayed that way. So it was a really, really interesting feeling hearing that crowd speak about it after we showed the movie in Armenia.
And for you, do you think now it's going to open up the doors for other stories, Armenian stories to be told, and maybe a little more international European stories that sometimes are not told in the United States?
I think I don't want to speak for everybody on the team, but for most of us from the diaspora, my understanding is, from the director writing the project to all of us coming on board, one of the big goals was we wanted to be able to showcase the country in the hopes that it would open up more doors for more Armenian filmmakers, for more stories specifically to be told there, to be able to showcase the beauty of the country. Our cinematographer, Mako, did an incredible job capturing it on screen and gave us a lot of pieces to work with. So I think for all of us, that was kind of the goal, is how do we portray the country, the people accurately, our stories accurately, to hopefully open up more doors for more Armenian representation, but also for more outside projects that may not have anything to do with Armenia to be able to go and film there.
What was it about the story of Shadow Major that inspired you to write it?
So I had collaborated with my friend Juliet, or we decided to work together. We'd seen each other's work. We're like, let's do something, and we were talking about what we wanted to create. We're both fans of fantasy, so we like things like 80s fantasy, things like Willow, or TV like Xena. Grew up watching Lady Hawk, things like that. Things are 80s fantasy is like, even when it's dark, it feel good and fun. And I felt like we weren't getting enough of that. There's a lot of grim dark things out there, and I want something that like really tugged on the heartstrings and just a story about friendship, but that's in this other world that happens to have magic and sword fights, and so it was kind of chasing a feeling of like that's innocent fun, but with really cool stuff in it, and that kind of started us off on the adventure.
Now, in production, must have helped having Juliet. What I was going to ask about, being a part of the project from early on. Did that help kind of like get the project going, and also connecting on the story? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, as our leading lady, she's a big fan of fantasy, but also has a community around her, a lot of followers for that kind of thing, and we connected through those types of events. So it was just really cool to like have sort of a muse for that kind of a thing. But yeah, we're nerds. Like we talk about the TV shows that we've seen that we feel like no one else has seen. So being able to have collaborators and friends who are excited about that kind of thing just really helped the ball roll very quickly, because like from idea to script to production was much faster than most of all of my other projects.
No, I'm sure you love it as a writer. You have all excited. Was there a scene you regretted writing? It's like, oh my God, this scene drove me crazy as a director. We pulled it off, but man, that was a hard one when I initially thought of it.
Action scenes in general are just hard, and I love them. Like it's not that I regret doing them, but there's just always so much that goes into them, and they take longer than I think. So it's like when I'm planning those things, it's specifically the first action sequence that we have is less of a fight scene and just a lot of quick things that happen. So in production, it's very difficult because it's like planning a montage of stuff, but you have to get each piece, and they're all separate, and the only person that really has it, a plan for it, is me in my head. So a lot of that time for that sequence, there's a lot of people like, wait, what are we doing? And I'm like, okay, we're shooting part 3 of it first, but then we do part 1, but then we get a shot for that. And so once it all edited together, I watched it, I'm like, it works, good. But yeah, so it was a little tough to get there, yeah.
We have a lot of directing students in our audience, actually. I'm curious, is there any moment, shot, scene that you're most proud of? Something, could be even a subtle one. Doesn't have to be dramatic, like, you know what, take a look at it because I'm really proud of this one.
There's a few. When I can, because there's so much happening on set, and so much large, grand stuff that's happening, it can be a lot, and it's a lot to cover. But sometimes there's just that close-up where it pushes in just a little, and we really get that moment of drama of like, this is the exciting part, or this is what's happening in the character's head that really just brings it alive. And to me, that's magic. So that I'd say that's the standout stuff that always makes me feel good. I'm like, I'm glad that's in there, and it just adds that. And then bits of comedy where there's like a lot going on in a shot, where in our action sequence we have like some people entering frame while they're struggling, and then through them we see other people dialogue, and then they exit. So it's like this very complicated like crossing shot that just was one of the first things that came into my head. I'm like, I think this will be really fun. I don't know if it'll work. And then we did it a few times and it worked, and I'm like, that's another one of my favorite shots.
Nobody wants this. What was the process of transitioning from season 1 as a camera operator, now moving to director of photography in season 2?
Yeah, I felt like it was pretty seamless, to be honest with you. My good friend started the show, Adrian Correa, amazing DP, very thoughtful guy, and he started the show, and we've known each other for a long time. And so, I guess the season 1 was like sort of right post-strike, I think. And, people were kind of sitting around and not doing stuff. And so I was in LA, he was coming out. He asked if I wanted to do it. I said, great, yeah, of course, I'll come in and operate for you, because I used to operate for him, and I missed it. And then we finished the show, he moved on to another show, and he said, look, I think you should call Wes. He told the producer, you should call Wes and have him do it, because he's actually a cinematographer, but he was available for the show. And he saw my work, and he said, hey, we'd really like to have you, and Kristen really likes you, and the cast really likes you, and we think you'd be the right fit for the show. So I presented them with my sort of new ideas for season 2. They really liked it, and that's history.
Well, I was going to ask about that. So how do you want to evolve the shooting? Like, what did you want to do? Maybe a little more evolution for the season 2 as compared to season 1.
Yeah, I think when I went into it, we wanted to maintain the kind of looseness of it. So I think we didn't want to throw out the sort of steady, handheld kind of we can follow the characters around vibe. We wanted to maintain that because it's just important for the tone of the show. But, when I went in, I was like, I want to shape the light more. I want to create like a sort of more magical cinematic kind of vibe to it. Not that Adrian didn't do that, it was big shoes to fill because he's really talented DP, but I wanted to take it in a different direction that way. I wanted to change up the camera, and change up how I approach the lighting for the show, and make it continue the the sort of love letter to LA that it is, and but try to find like a new way to light the women and the men in the show and make it feel just a little bit more romantic for the new stages that the characters were going through, but also add some more drama to it visually, because there's some really sort of sad moments in season 2 that, you know, like particularly with Sasha and Esther and Morgan and her love interest in that season that really they didn't have in season 1, I think. And so I wanted to explore maybe pushing the show in a slightly more dramatic direction in that regard.
Was there any, we have a lot of cinematographer students that watch, was there any scene or sequence that you're most proud of? Something like, this one was an interesting, hard, maybe a bit difficult to pull off, but like, I want them to take a look at this moment.
I would say I'm really fond of season 2, episode 10. I think it just has an expansiveness, and it's a singular location, but I really like that episode because it's mostly a singular location, but because of that, how do you make all of the moments in those scenes feel a little bit different? How do you heighten the drama for certain things? How do you push towards the comedy and other things? And you know, we had that episode span the course of an entire day into the evening, and it gave us a lot of creative freedom to create a visual arc for that episode that I thought really worked. And it brings us from, you know, a daytime scenes in the wedding reception, the wedding party, to the very end outside the LACMA with the beautiful glowing orbs and you know, just their moment of sort of finding each other again about whether or not the types of people and the things that they want to pursue in life, if it matters, because they are in love. And so it doesn't matter if you're this or that, and you know, they can still, you know, so it's not a specific scene, but it is in a way it's just a big, gigantic, elongated scene. So yeah.
Puffing Iron. You write the comic book. What were the challenges of adapting it into a story for a film?
Funnily enough, we kind of did it at the same time. Like we made the comic book while we were making the movie, because it initially started as a screenplay, but then I realized, oh, this really lends itself to the comic book form. It's very colorful, it's very vibrant, it's very cartoonish in a lot of ways. So challenges in adapting it, I mean, there weren't many, because the synergy is definitely there. You watch it, it feels like a comic book movie, and you read it, and it feels like a colorful film. So, yeah.
But with the challenge of comic book movies, I argue that a good comic book movie is actually a good drama at its heart. Yeah. Good comedy. What did you see in your 2 leads that could pull this off? Because they got to pull off some really funny, brilliant comedy, but you also have to make it a heart, and also in this fantasy world almost.
You know, we had over 4,000 actors read for the 2 leads. And our 2 leads, Eli and Brian, that came in, they were the first to come in for a chemistry read. And then we saw a bunch of people after them, and then we said, no, those 2 first guys, those 2 first guys had something. So a lot of their like real world experiences, a lot of their real world, like we pulled a lot from just how they would make us laugh one-on-one, away from cameras, away from the script, and we would incorporate that into the film a lot. So they just had sort of a unique charisma to them, each of them differently, and that's where that came from.
And all right, so was there any particular scene that, you know, you write it, it's great, but it was like, but actually shooting it was a little more of a challenge than you expected, but you pulled it off and enjoyed it. Was there any particular scene that comes to mind?
Oh gosh. There's one scene. Yeah, there's one scene where a character is unknowingly drugged before a weightlifting competition, and he realizes as he's like going up to the stand to perform his lifts that he's been drugged. And it was really fun to write. You know, like we knew it was kind of a climatic comedic moment of the film, where there's a character who struggles with counting numbers, and when he's on drugs, it like gets way worse. So he accidentally puts all of the weights on one side of the bar and only like 2 on the other side. And when he goes to lift it, I just had it in the script, like he tries to lift and he falls. But our actor did this really amazing thing where he put all the weights to one side and then he bends down to do the deadlift and he like topples over and then the bar just like flew in this way that you just could not plan. And it led to just a really great moment in the movie.
Switching gears a little, we're at Wondercon, and you just moderated a panel. What was it about? What did you enjoy most about moderating?
Oh my gosh, just meeting these other creatives, meeting these people that make the stuff that I'm a fan of, you know, so it's really, really cool talking to these people about their processes, people that work in all different sides of the business, whether it's cinematography, music, or directing, show running. Just, you know, meeting people, you meet some really cool people, and you see how some of your favorite stuff is made.
All right, so we're going to go back to your early days, Lala's House. What was it about telling a story about Haiti child trafficking made you tell that story?
Well, the story found me. I was working in Haiti studying children's rights and living conditions, and then before the earthquake, then the earthquake happened, and then I went back to help, and then this American nun saw that I was also a filmmaker, and she's like, there is this orphanage where the nun is allegedly allowing foreign men to come in and have sex with the children. And I think, I don't know if I said an American nun, she was an American nurse. That's why I slowed down there for a second. An American nurse who said that she had witnessed this. And then as I started, and she was like, you're a filmmaker, no one's listening. They had tried to notify the authorities, but that nun had the police on her payroll, apparently. And so when I looked into it, I hadn't found her ordained by anybody. She was more like a mafia queen who was operating with selling children. And yeah, so then that it found me, and then I just couldn't let it go. I went to the place, I saw where these kids were. They were jaundiced. They were like, I mean, I didn't get to go in it, but I saw them through the bar. It was a very cold area too. Like, people think Haiti is warm. There's mountainous areas that are very cold, and these kids weren't clothed, and it was freezing. And so I could see, and everywhere I used to go in Haiti, kids are very curious. So when I went into the tent cities, they will come up and they'll hold your hand. They're like, want to touch your hair. They're super, and they'll show you the toys they've made. They're very beautiful children. And this was the first time the children saw a foreigner and was afraid. I'd never seen a kid hide, and that tells me that something with foreigners could be harming them. And so I started to investigate it. That footage that I had is what I used to apply to USC for film school. And then when I got to USC, my documentary faculty are the ones who encouraged me to take the truth, the interviews that I had and my personal experience, and write it into a fiction narrative. And that's what became Lala's House.
That was a segue question. So you're marrying your love passion into film. What was the experience like USC, kind of honing your filmmaking craft to combine your passion for social justice and all these stories, but with filmmaking?
Well, I was very supported at USC. I think that was the secret sauce that I needed, because I've been doing film willy-nilly ever since because I was an archaeologist before I was a filmmaker, and then there was this film crew when I was doing archaeology that I helped write the script, and then that film went to win festivals, and so that's what made me think, oh, I should combine it. So I started working at Nat Geo, but I was just out in the world swimming around, not really knowing, like working here, doing this, doing that, and then I went to Haiti, got that information, and then it was USC that helped to put it together. And I mean, like, kudos to my documentary faculty too for being honest and saying, don't continue this as a doc, because it's dangerous, and I didn't have the security at the time. And to be honest, to say that you can reach more people through fiction narrative. So like sometimes someone told me that unfortunately, this isn't always true, but unfortunately, sometimes people who come to see documentaries tend to already agree with you. And so if you have a very not palatable subject matter, like sex trafficking of children, you disguise it, you Trojan horse it, and with a fiction narrative, distract them with actors like Garcelle Beauvais, and Jamie Foxx supported us, and so like you get that attention, and then suddenly they start learning about the issues of child trafficking.
Now that segues to my last question, Kaliwood Entertainment. What made you want to create your own company?
You've got to own your own stuff, Matt. That's the way to go. Because okay, so I always watched, and I know this is weird because I make very different films from him, but I have always watched Tyler Perry. I mean, watched him as a person and how he went from living in his car and never giving up on his dreams and writing his stage plays, and then the legend has it, I've never really confirmed this, but let's pretend this is true because it's inspired me, that the person who was supposed to play Medea one night didn't show up, and he didn't give up. He didn't say the play's off. He put on the dress and played Medea. That's the legend. You can Google it and verify and let me know. But regardless, it inspired me because I love that grit. Just like Sean Baker, the filmmaker, that I love the grit. And so, but Tyler Perry went on to build an empire. He went from sleeping in his car to building one of the largest studios in the United States. And I want to be that, especially as a female filmmaker. I want other young women as well to see that they can also be leaders and make and own your own content. You don't have to wait for permission. You greenlight yourself. You greenlight others. You help to bring up voices that normally wouldn't be heard. We need it in all corners. We need the men to do it in their corners of what they're doing. We need the women to do it. We need even LGBTQ. We need transgender. Whatever it is that you are representing for your people, own it. Own it, so that you can have control over the narrative.